2021. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation of the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Master Plan Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to participate in the meetings may do so in the following manner: by finding the meeting on the town website, southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. And can we have a roll call for quorum? Luttrell here. Watson.
Yeah.
Connolly.
Here.
Stivers.
Here.
McKee.
Here.
Savidovich.
Here.
Glazemitsky.
Here.
And Warren.
Here.
Very good. So the first item on our agenda is review and recommendations of the goals from the municipal vulnerability report, and whether any additional goals should be added to the master plan in reference to that.
Will I begin?
Sure.
Can you let me share, Sarah? Hello.
Yes. All set?
Okay, so let me see. I can move this around. This is about as big as I can get it without losing most of it, or some of it. So, but you know, everyone knows they can make their own screen bigger. So, so all of the documents we're going to look at tonight are in the shared drive. This one looks more complicated than it actually is. I just want to say that first. So this is a mapping document that Melissa and Mimi and I have worked on to understand the best way, or to try and understand the best way to integrate the MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan, I think that's right, into the master plan. Because if you remember what we said we wanted to do is where there are already plans that have been developed and approved by boards and committees, we want to try and incorporate as much as we can of those, at least the high level goals and recommendations, into the master plan, so that you get this kind of integration, this kind of cascading down. And obviously the more we can include those plans, the more likely it is that we're going to get engagement and action from those that are going to be responsible for it. So Melissa Danza, who's a conservation agent, I think everyone knows her. She describes herself as the guardian of the MVP. So the MVP there's a summary. This is taken from the summary of findings, which is in the shared drive as well. It's a document that was prepared in March 2020 and was used. It was prepared with the use of external consultants, not the MAPC people, different ones. And And it was actually used to allow us to gain MVP designation as a town, which is kind of a big step forward because it allows us to get grants. So within the summary of findings, there are 3 areas: stormwater management, emergency services, and ecological health, that have recommendations attached to them. Now, those recommendations, that there isn't per se a process within the MVP program to kind of create implementation plans and assign responsibility for it. So Melissa is actually pretty excited that we're going to put it into the master plan, because she feels that there's a much better chance that we'll actually get you know, engagement, and people will take notice and do something with it. So that's a bit of background. So what I did, a great view here, hang on a minute. What I did was take, on the left hand side, you see the 3 groups of recommendations, and then on the right hand side, between Mimi and I, we kind of mapped which were the existing recommendations within the master plan that we thought had the best fit against those. So we did do it the other way around and try and match the MVP against the master plan, but it got quite complicated because the master plan recommendations are in different sections. So if I try and summarize that overall mapping, so the first section on stormwater management, there's little blue arrows here that didn't come out very well, but you'll see on the right hand side there are 3 goals in white and then an environment goal in green. Those are the recommendations that are mapped against stormwater management in the MVP. And the white recommendations, you can see there's a kind of a 1-to-1 mapping. So encourage LID utilization really maps pretty closely against stormwater management recommendation 1, implement local regulation changes. And those, the level of detail in the MVP plan is such that it makes more sense to use the specific wording of those recommendations rather than the kind of slightly shorter, a little bit more general recommendations in the MVP. And then there's a reason why there's this whole green area here. It's because there are actually already 4 recommendations. There's a goal and 4 recommendations within the master plan specifically related to stormwater management. So I'm going to actually, no, I'll come. It's hard to switch between documents. So I'll pause for a minute. Does that make sense of how that mapping works?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I like how you've incorporated what's already in the master plan with what's been in the vulnerability preparedness plan.
Okay. So if we then go down to the next section on the MVP, it's the emergency services, kind of what we would also call emergency response plan. And you'll see there are actually, there's a 1-to-1 mapping there around sheltering capacity. But we don't actually have in the master plan really anything substantive around emergency response. So this improve, expand emergency shelters actually comes from in fact, all of these recommendations in the master plan come from the resiliency section. So there was a section called public services and resiliency. So there's a 1-to-1 mapping there. And then the other thing to kind of note is when you look at the recommendations in green and kind of this peachy color under hazard identification and mitigation, those again were in the resiliency plan, but there's no equivalent in the MVP plan. So the recommendation there, proposal there, will be to keep what we've already got in the master plan. So what we end up with around resiliency is actually two groups of recommendations, two goals, one around hazard identification and mitigation. So how do you stop the risks, or how do you prevent the risks becoming kind of real? How do you respond to climate change in that sense? And then emergency services, emergency response, which is, well, what do you do when it actually happens? The only one, the ones in peach that we got down here, this is where, what did I say we were going to do here? Sorry, bear with me a minute. Oh yeah, these are, we had two recommendations in the master plan, one around water supply vulnerability and one around health of wetlands, which was kind of, it was a good statement, but didn't really lead to action. So the proposal will be to combine those into one, so that we then end up with quite a specific recommendation over making sure that we protect the water supply. Okay, so that's really about, you know, clean water, water that's usable by the community. Okay. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, and then the final set, if I can just get this down. Nope. Yeah, here we go. The final group of recommendations were grouped under this heading, ecological health. And this is where there's a bit of a kind of a bit of a kind of mix here. There's the item in blue in the MVP. There isn't an equivalent in the master plan, so the proposal is to keep that one, to add that to the master plan. But we've actually got some very detailed recommendations in the open space goal 1 and the environment around protection of open space and invasive species, which are much more detailed and specific than the two within the master plan. So the proposal there is to keep the master plan. So you see there's some areas we're keeping the MVP, some areas we're keeping the master plan, and we kind of merge them together. There's only one, this little one here in yellow. Melissa and I are recommending that we don't actually include that in the master plan. It's unlike stormwater regulations, stormwater local bylaw, where there is a lot of it, I think, quite some opportunity for us to tighten up the regulations in the local bylaw. There's actually not a lot we can do with wetland protection, because it's so much of it is already mandated by the state, and what we've done in the local bylaw is to really just kind of reflect that. There's one very small recommendation in the OSLP about extending the buffer zone around wetland from 100 feet to 300 feet, which we're still debating at the Conservation Commission, but frankly, we have enough problems trying to get, you know, projects pushed through with approval with 100-foot buffer zone. If we were to make that 300 feet, basically, most projects in town would be much more difficult to get approval for. So what Melissa and I are recommending on that one is that should just be something that we say in the MVP. This is the job of the Conservation Commission. It's not really a strategic project. It's what the Conservation Commission does. If there's a requirement to update the bylaw because the state or federal recommendations change, then we'll do that as part of the remit of the Conservation Commission.
I think that's appropriate, Judith. Also, what is there a particular reason as to why they're trying to get the buffer to be 300 feet as opposed to 100 feet? Is this something like new based on research, or is it just?
There's a reference in the open space rec plan to it gives it the perspective is it gives better protection to bird life.
Gotcha.
But some of that research, I think, Karen, I think I'm right in saying some of that research I mean, the OSRP plan was started back in 2016. So some of the research is kind of fairly old already.
Yep. Gotcha.
Judith, can I expand on Gina's question a minute? Is there a problem or issue that the Conservation Commission has run into in some other area that would suggest we ought to take another look at these bylaws, or is there nothing else out there that has been an ongoing?
Not on wetlands.
Okay.
No, I mean, wetland protection is, the issues that tend to come up on wetland when we do reviews for wetland is inadequate mapping of the wetland boundary, which is the kind of the start point for looking at a new project. So oftentimes we have to kind of send the applicant back out to more accurately map the wetland. But once that's been done, it's not often that we get any controversy around is it wetland or is it not wetland, unless it's an intermittent stream. I think I can remember two instances where there wasn't an agreement between the applicant and the Conservation Commission in the last 2 years. Then, the other issue that comes up in wetland protection tends to be where the applicant wants to do development within the 20-foot buffer zone, which is, we really try and not have that happen. And then it's a question of, okay, how can we find an appropriate mitigation, which is generally, some other positive action within the community that we can say, well, okay, if you do this over here, this is going to offset the impact of the 20-foot buffer zone. It's really stormwater regulations that are much more, to some extent, controversial, but sometimes much harder to get the best overall result for the community. The best example is probably Deerfoot Road, not the side where Karen lives, the side on the eastern side, no, southern side of Deerfoot Road, the side that goes up to the opposite ends,
South of Route 9, yeah.
Yes. So that's a really great example where, because of the way that the new properties up there were applied for, sorry, let me start again. Because of the way that the developer wanted to submit the applications, he did it as individual properties as opposed to a subdivision, which meant that it then makes it harder to look from a kind of global perspective at a development. And that's where we have run into, in the last 2 years, a number of issues with Deerfoot, where the stormwater permits were required on 3 of the properties, but not on the other 2. But the other 2 have got stormwater issues, but they weren't required to have a stormwater permit. And so that's one of the things we know on the Conservation Commission we want to do, is take a long, hard look at the state regulations, federal regulations, make sure we're incorporating the latest scientific advice on that as well as trying to kind of tighten up some of these little loopholes. So this is a good area, and it's going to be our focus really in the next year or so.
Okay. It's helpful. I guess one of the reasons, or one of the values of the master plan, I think, is to help various committees highlight issues that are of concern to them and create ongoing visibility and opportunity for pressure to make progress on things. And it sounds like the wetlands bylaw stuff didn't really rise to that level, but there's not a real pressing need for attention, repair, whatever here. So I'm a big fan. If it's not broken, let's not try to fix it. And we got plenty of objectives without that particular one.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we need.
I have a question. So the wetlands bylaw, most of it is the wetlands Protection Act, but part of the bylaw is part of is a Southborough bylaw. That 20-foot no touch is not part of the Wetlands Protection Act. That's a specific to Southborough.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, I know there has been talk in the past about increasing that no touch buffer, but that's not something the Concom's looking at.
Not the 20-foot, no. I mean, we can take this back and have another look at it if people. I can take this back to Melissa again. And we can, yeah, maybe let me do this on this wetland protection. Wait a minute. Let me take it back to Melissa and see if we can dig out some of the work that was done in the breakout groups that came up with that, just to make sure that we haven't missed anything. Okay.
Because I know as Southborough gets built out, a lot of what's being developed now is environmentally sensitive areas. So, you know, a lot of projects build, you know, in grade right up to that line and everything else.
Oh yeah, yeah. We know of one right now for sure. Well, two right now, but one in particular. Okay. So let me just stop sharing that, and I'm going to share one other doc. Nope, I don't want that. Here we go. So as I said, these are all in the shared drive. Come on. You can do it. So we looked at that mapping master plan MVP. What I did here is kind of consistent with what we did on the downtown initiative sense of community, was create this kind of Word document that really I think we should be able to use these as kind of audit trails. If anyone ever asks, well, how did you get from this version of the plan to that version of the plan? We'll have these audit trails so that everyone can take a look at it if they need to. So what I did here is simply say, just summarize what we've just gone through. Okay. So this is the resiliency goal within public services and resiliency. And so what the proposal is to go from one goal here and separate it out and have two goals, one around hazard mitigation and one around responses, emergency response. And then the recommendations get split around hazard mitigation and emergency response. And then I just put a little footnote at the bottom to say, these are the resiliency goals, these are 3 resiliency recommendations that are now being replaced by MVP recommendations. But they've actually been transferred into the stormwater goal. So I think from what I think we've ended up with is a kind of a nice kind of pretty focused set of resiliency goals. The only thing I'd say, there's still a little bit of outstanding work there, because the other part of the MVP process is to update the hazard mitigation plan. And that's been done. It's actually with the state for review at the moment. And again, I think this is one of these ones where if you get it reviewed, you get the option, potentially you get more money. I think that's right. So as soon as that comes back, Melissa's going to share it with us, and we can just take a look at our hazard mitigation recommendations and make sure there's nothing else in there that we want to add from that plan. So again, trying to keep those two plans in line. Everyone good with that?
I am. I had just one thing that has come up recently, and I don't know if it would be under resiliency or environmental, or is some type of a either tree canopy bylaw or lot clearing bylaw. I know like now our low impact development, and I think stormwater kicks in if more than an acre is going to be disturbed, or more
Yeah.
than 50% of a lot. So I don't know if we want to look at decreasing that or doing something around tree clearing, because there seems to be a great concern, again, as we get closer to build out in town, that it's much more noticeable when lots are clear cut than it was, 20 years ago when there were a lot more trees around. And there's a lot of concern lately about clear cutting lots.
It's true, Mimi. There was a whole dialogue on Facebook in my Southborough, not my Southborough, in Southborough Share and Care, specifically about the clear cutting and the concerns around that.
So I wonder if this committee wants to look at that and add something along those lines as a goal.
I think that makes sense. I think finding at the very least a placeholder for that and having it in there so we can talk about fleshing it out, I think is very appropriate. I agree with Mimi. I'm hearing a lot more about that now than I have previously, and I think that's worthy of some attention.
I agree as well. I've definitely also heard a lot of those same types of discussions, and I agree. It makes sense to find a way to incorporate it, and I'm not sure how how you set standards for that, but I'm sure other communities have done it, so I'm sure we can figure out a way to incorporate it somehow.
And Julie, I don't think we necessarily need to do what I think of as a completely thorough job of it. Seems to me the important first step is to get it into the structure. So it's there, people can refer to it and continue to talk about it, plan for it. And it could be something as simple as saying that the master plan says this is important and we need to develop a more specific response over the next 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, or whatever it is, to actually follow through with whatever is the appropriate response here. So that's not necessarily perfect maybe by itself, but at least it gets the issue on the table and creates some momentum for follow-up, which I think is important.
Yeah.
And Judith, I'd also say great job here to you and others that were involved with this. I think this is one of the very interesting areas where we've made great progress with this version of the plan. This one, the schools, and one or two others that I think were insufficiently represented last time around. I think it's great to have these pieces in here and again, highlight some of the issues that are important going forward. So great work to get this put together. I know the mapping from the MVP into this was not a trivial exercise. So, thank you.
Judith is the master.
Yes.
The Excel master.
He is very good. That's right.
It's very holistic, being able to integrate the two together, and also even the tracking around the versions, because there may be some questions in the future around how things changed, but I think it's so well documented, we'll be able to answer them.
Yeah. Okay. So how about we should we move to open space and environment, because we kind of touched on that a little bit with stormwater. Let me just show again. So this actually. So where am I? There you are. You're hiding. So the open space and open space protection and environment green initiatives, they have been they were some of the first I think we're doing under Karen's great leadership that we use that as our kind of template for kind of creating these objective goal kind of recommendation models. So way back in May, and I think they were very detailed. But I wanted, because we were going through all of these documents for kind of for all of these sections for a final time, and I'd started looking at it on the stormwater side and environment, I thought, well, we should probably just have another look at it, see if there's anything else that you know, we could fine tune a little bit. So let me just go through open space. So open space is pretty much as was. So what you'll see here, and again, it's all about having the audit trail, is anything that's changed from the original goal recommendation. If there's nothing in the proposed update, it means there's no changes. If there's something in the right-hand box, it basically means either a whole new recommendation or a rewording or just a bit of a tweak. So this one was just tweaking slightly around open space. Just a change under 1.5. So Karen had taken this to the Open Space Preservation Commission, and they'd asked for a couple of little tweaks on the wording, which I think were fine. There's one at the bottom here around, this was actually a recommendation that the Conservation Commission asked for, and at some point it got added in, but I just wanted to make sure that we had a note as to where it came from, because it wasn't in the original initiative, which is really to make sure that, again, speaking to what Sam was saying, making sure that we have visibility to it and people recognize that we believe it's important, so something happens about it. It's to make sure that we have actions underway to put town-owned open space parcels under the care and control of the Conservation Commission, which is pretty standard in other communities. And obviously properties like Chestnut Hill Farm and Breakneck Hill are under the Conservation Commission, but not all of them. And I think one of the things we're trying to do on the Conservation Commission is not only kind of keep up with the the applications for change to to properties, stormwater permits, wetland protection kind of approvals, but to try and be more strategic in what we're doing within the community. And we're working on our sections of the open space rec plan, but we also recognize that just keeping compliance with and keeping on top of conservation restrictions is really important to us as well. So this would be a kind of, next to stormwater protection, this is probably the second one that the Conservation Commission really needs to get its teeth into.
This is the greatest news I've heard in a long time. Because historically, our Conservation Commission didn't want anything to do with open space. And so in having properties under the care and control of the Conservation Commission gives them extra protection. So that's the greatest thing. Years ago, the Open Space Preservation Commission did a GIS study of all the open space parcels and looked at all the deeds and all the easements. And that was one of the major recommendations that came out of that from the land use attorneys, was to transfer things to the care and control of the Conservation Commission. So that's awesome.
I mean, for me, I'm just going to give a bit of background on this. So the mix of people on the Conservation Commission is kind of interesting, because it's different people that have kind of different backgrounds, but also different wouldn't say they're pet projects, but just, different areas of focus. So, Ben Smith is absolutely passionate around conservation and conservation management and restrictions. And he's a kind of a font of knowledge, but he's also the resident engineer. So he's the guy that will look at the stormwater plans. Jeff Pete is, very into, wildlife and stewardship and open space. So that's his kind of area. Sherry Widdis is, on the Westboro, I think she actually works for the town. So she's an expert on all of the rules. I mean, she'll come up with something and say, oh, this piece of paper hasn't been signed properly. And we all kind of go, oh, all right then. But my kind of area is very much around, the more strategic initiatives and strategic plan. And this is, that's what I lobby on. So it's kind of a nice mix now. Hopefully we'll be able to move this one forward. Okay, so that's the first goal on open space. And I'm assuming, Karen, you're okay with all of these changes? Can't hear.
Yes, I took a look at it before the meeting, and thank you for incorporating in the feedback that we had already had from our last open space preservation meeting. So yes, so far I am, but I was looking forward to having you go through it all.
So this next proposal is, again, some of it, I think what I was trying to do was just to kind of tighten it up a little bit, so that we get a kind of a good balance across all the different areas. So there are actually two goals in this plan. There's one here, this right at the bottom. Number 3 is around the connectivity of open space for wildlife and people. And then the second goal is around expanding access. So what I'm suggesting here is, but there's only 2 recommendations under goal 3. So what I'm suggesting we do is try and consolidate them, so that we have the overall goal around expanding connectivity and access, and then adding in the wildlife needs into this main kind of focus area around planning and strategizing over how we actually link open space, because I think that's probably going to be a big meaty recommendation for the open space kind of team to kind of work on there. The no changes for these other ones, just a suggestion here, proposal here, to move this recommendation over education into the 4th goal, which is around management of open space, because it's not so much around access, it's around the management. There was a reference here to sidewalks, and that's already, we've got some really strong recommendations in the accessibility connectivity plan around sidewalks. So I think this one's a little bit redundant there. This one, 2.8, I just wanted to highlight again. It's about the audit trail. When we went through the 2008 master plan, and we had conversation over goals, over recommendations that hadn't been started or hadn't really progressed, and we did come to an agreement that we would not include any reference to access for boats to reservoirs, or any sort of, other than the very limited passive recreation, because the DCR and MWRA are just not going to budge on those. So I think that would lead us to say we should really take that one out, because it's not going to get worked on. If that's okay with everyone. So number 3 has been consolidated. So we end up with 4 like really strong goals, I think, on open space. The other change, is that me? Again, I just consolidated 2 very similar recommendations here. And again here around getting the residents involved and the community involved. So I think once we get to implementation planning, I think that'll just be a help, because sometimes I think if we have too many recommendations, we kind of, it's harder to prioritize them. And I think that was it on open space. Everyone good with those?
Looks good.
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Good to me.
Okay, so moving on, environmental green. This is where we've added these great recommendations from the MVP. So we end up with 9 recommendations on stormwater and water quality, stormwater management. But I think those I think they are good recommendations that reflect the importance there, and we can certainly look at that, adding something in around tree clearing there as well, potentially, because I think that's where it would link to, because there's a very direct link to tree clearing, increases in erosion, problems with stormwater management. Goal number 2. This is the area we hadn't had anything on before, around recycling. Or did I do that? Oh, I think I just reworded that slightly in red, but those are all, I think, still good recommendations. Renewable natural resources. I think those all seemed, very specific, very, very measurable. And that's one of the things we've talked about before, is once we get into implementation planning, all of these recommendations, we've got to be able to measure them. So that was good. And then the final one is, there's 2 final ones actually, invasive species and plants and pollinators. Oh yeah, okay. So the only one here, Karen, and maybe you can recall this one, I couldn't remember what the metrics were that we were talking about here. So
so this came up in the meeting, and what we had originally had, if I remember correctly, was identifying the top 5 invasive species and creating plans around that, which of course sounds very measurable and concrete. But the feeling was, with other members of my committee who know more about invasive species than I do, that it would be difficult to identify just 5 that were outlined on a master plan and have those stay consistent, because it's kind of an ongoing challenge based on what emerges in the town. And for example, the most recent sort of issue around Tree of Heaven is something that perhaps wouldn't have been able to be predicted if we had put it in a master plan 6 years ago. So that's why the wording was slightly changed, was not to make it vague or unmeasurable, but to acknowledge the fact that it needs to be a kind of ongoing, continuing assessment around what are the priority invasive species and how we're going to deal with it.
Okay. And so the metrics that are referred to in 4.2, is that the metrics around invasive species then?
Metrics for open space versus people's yards. Recommend final review.
Oh yeah, that was just my comment, because I couldn't remember what the metrics related to.
Oh, so I think this was just a comment that we could try to have some metrics or more specifics for our town open space, but that we shouldn't try to create metrics for people's yards because we don't have control over that.
Okay.
Whereas I think in one of our more kind of grandiose and idealistic versions, we had talked about people's yards as well, but basically the discussion was, yeah, we're probably going to make a lot of people nervous by having us make some proclamation about what they can and can't do with their yard.
Okay, so that was more just a comment as opposed to a recommendation then.
That's right. Yeah.
Now. Okay.
Yeah.
I can tweak that one. Okay. Yeah, and then there were just a couple of suggestions here on goal 5.4, increase the use of beautiful native plants in public town areas. I
Mhm.
kind of felt as though it was duplicating 5.1. The poison ivy along roadways and trails. I've tweaked that goal a little bit because poison ivy is not who knew? It's not an invasive species, it's a nuisance species, apparently. So I've just kind of moved that out there. So this is more around the kind of like, what do you want to get rid of versus what do you want to add? And then the only other question here was the planning board tree and city initiative should have native plants. I don't know whether we felt that was covered under 5.1 and 5.2 as well. So, but you and I can talk about that offline, Karen. So we
Sure, that sounds good. Yeah, let's.
I think our
Good
tree
excuse.
does recommend native. What was voted on at town meeting.
Sorry.
I think it does.
In terms of the planning board, because this is related to the planning board as well in terms of what they're requiring for town buildings and for new construction.
So Tree City was adopted by the town at town meeting last year. And that references native species.
Excellent. Great. I love it when we're so aligned.
So you're saying we do not need 5.6 here? As Judith has suggested, it's already in 5.1. 5.1.
What's that, Sam? I don't think I heard you.
We don't need 5.6 as Judith is
Oh.
suggesting here because it's already covered above.
Okay. Yep.
Is that what we're saying?
I think so. I think because it's in the I mean, I can add the term Tree City Initiative or whatever somewhere in here just so that we've got it. That's probably a good way
That
to
would be
do
good.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's little old open space and environment.
Judith,
Yes.
can I make one comment about the recycling thing that you had? One of the sections above there. I think that's good to have in, but that is a really tricky area nowadays. And because of the economics of recycling, we're taking a hard look at the transfer station. And it turns out that it's actually significantly cheaper for us to throw the recyclables in the pit and have them sent to the landfill now than to have them recycled, because the market for that is crazy. The Chinese stopped accepting paper and plastic recyclables. People are desperate to get rid of it around the globe. So it's not clear how that's going to turn out. And there are no immediately obvious, easy solutions to that. But I think it's well worth keeping on the list and figuring out how the town and all towns can deal with the new world in terms of the economics of that. So again, it is very much up in the air, I think, at this point, and people have not figured out how to deal with that. Not that we shouldn't keep it on here, but we need to be aware that that's going to be an ongoing issue that may be an expensive solution ultimately.
Is that all recycling, Sam, or just plastics?
Plastic and paper.
Oh, paper is not?
Paper is tough too. I think cardboard is easier nowadays, I think. So
How's glass?
glass is also more difficult than it had been previously. I don't know the exact economics for glass, but that whole world is just on its ear at this point. So, and again, I think part of the solution ultimately, apparently, is going to be to find specialists who actually focus on particular recyclables and figure out ways to deal with them, which requires separation on the front end, which we don't do now. So somebody's got to do the separation, which creates additional cost. So, you know, again, my point simply is to keep it on, but might make some reference in there to, you know, the economics of this activity are very much up in the air. There'll be an area of some volatility change over the next planning horizon, but the town needs to keep a close eye on it and, you know, adapt appropriately as those models develop. Some wishy-washy language, but recognizing that it's going to be something that needs attention and is not going to be easy to fix.
Okay. Very good. Right. What should we do next? How about should we do accessibility next? Because that's really just mainly some tweaking. Where did my accessibility go? Oh, it's gone. Maybe I didn't post it. Okay. Just a moment.
You should post it because I got it off the drive.
Yeah. I can't see it though. Where did it go? Diversity. There was the individual one, but I thought I put the other one on there as well. Sorry about that. Just a sec. Let me see if I can find it.
It was censored by the North Koreans and moved from the shared drive.
What? Did you say?
What, Sam? I missed your funny joke.
It was censored by the North Koreans. Kim Jong-un didn't like it, so he removed it from the shared drive.
We are, I've heard in the news, we are a major point of focus for him, Southborough, Massachusetts.
Sure, I'm sure he doesn't praise the master plan committee. I know.
Exactly.
There we go. Okay. Open for me. Okay, let me just see if I can make this a bit bigger.
Yeah, Bill Sines is not here for this one.
Yeah, he and I have had some ongoing email exchanges, so he is okay with what we've got here,
Great.
but he wanted to make sure that Will Warren was as well. I think Will is on today, so
I see it.
Yes, I'm on.
okay. So accessibility connectivity. Actually, there's only Bill Sines and Kat are probably the only two people from the original group that worked on this. Although I did some pulling together for them at one point, I think middle of last year. So this is a pretty big section, and it's got some kind of meaty recommendations in here. And so as of with all of these, and I have not taken anything out. I might have put a little note to say I've consolidated, the suggestion is to consolidate or to withdraw, but nothing has come out. But let's just go through it and I'll explain. So the first goal is around vehicular movement. And what I did on these first two recommendations is I combined two recommendations here because it did feel as though we were talking about the same thing. One was about identifying the infrastructure and then an approach to plan and build it. So I kind of wordsmithed that a little bit, but also added the reference to funding, because I think in this day and age, if we don't have funding, then we're not going anywhere with these.
Sorry, Judith, were you intending to share your screen?
I was. I'm so sorry about that. Hang on. Share. Can you see that now? What are we sharing?
It's coming up. There we are. Thank you.
Okay. So this is vehicular movement. So just consolidated, combined the first two recommendations. I did a little bit of wordsmithing on 1.3. There we go. Similar thing on 1.5 and 1.6, because we were talking about the same topic. I think the reason we ended up with probably more recommendations because there were different sections of this objective were worked on independently by different people, and then we kind of merged into one document. So I think that's probably why we've ended up with more than we probably need. But Sam, were you saying something?
No, I was saying something. The
Oh, good.
20-year horizon on figuring out vehicular movement needs seems pretty optimistic.
Do we want to make that 30?
No,
Or you want to make it 10?
I think 10 would be a lot more realistic. I mean, 10 years ago, I'm not sure that anybody knew we were going to build the new public safety building.
Okay.
I think anyone knew that 3 years ago.
Well, you know, this is an area where I think you have to evergreen. I don't know exactly how that would get into the recommendations, but I mean, you can certainly look ahead 10 years based on what you know today, but you know, it could change radically in the next 3 to 5 years, or you know.
Okay. I can certainly wordsmith that one. These next recommendations, I think, just stood alone. Didn't really see much that we needed to change on that. Unless anyone has anything else. Transportation services. This is where we get more around the transit, the T internal shuttles. And again, some of this was just combining them. Oh yeah, 2.5, we have a recommendation in here around enhancing retail convenience around the T station. So I was just wondering whether we should move that one to commercial diversity rather than in accessibility.
Judith, this is
Yeah.
Julie. I agree with that. When we're talking about, the Southville, Corderville area, I think that's, something that's appropriate to move to that section.
Okay.
A lot of these have to do, there's sort of a concept in the economic development world that's called last mile. And I know some people in the town have been focused on it. There are a lot of like regional groups, and I apologize. I wasn't involved in these original conversations. So if I'm just repeating what you already know, please stop me. And I don't know a ton about it, but I know there are some regional transit groups that kind of talk about a lot of these things, how to get people to that last mile from the T station to, the business on Route 9, or vice versa, how to get, to, sort of those smaller gaps, and whether it's, Uber or Lyft or bikes or ride shares or vans or buses, that's something that there's definitely some work on that. But, these are all important issues that I think, there's definitely some overlap there with economic development and supporting businesses. But I appreciate that this is its own section.
Okay.
So Julie, you're suggesting we leave the retail in the Southville area in this section versus moving it?
For the Southville area, I think it's appropriate to move it to the commercial development section.
This wasn't clear what you thought was.
Okay. Yeah, I'm making notes here. I'm sure Kate will keep me on the straight and narrow too. Okay. Pedestrian access. again, some is just combining. Oh, yes. Sidewalks. There's a reference to developing sidewalks in the villages in commercial diversity, and we've got it here as well. So I wasn't sure whether or not we wanted to keep, I mean, we can have it in two places. Or whether or not this is a slightly different focus. Because this was more around connecting the neighborhoods.
I don't mind it in two places. I think it's important.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Oh, and here's one about the reference to funding in 3.5. 3.7. Kat, this was one that was put in back in May 2020, and I wasn't sure is this the borough's trail loop? So is it complete, or have we still got work to do on that?
Oh, Judith, we still have work to do, and if you haven't signed,
I've signed it.
actually,
I've signed it.
I saw your name.
And I sent it to Keith to sign too.
Oh, thank you. Connect trail structure with similar structures in abutting towns. What's a trail structure? Is a trail structure just a trail?
I think so, yeah.
I think this could probably come out of here because we have it noted throughout the master plan in different areas, and I think just also in the open space section to connect trail systems. So
yeah,
I think this is repetitive.
Can I just say something about the trails? So I know last week we talked about, increasing engagement with the community and opening up new channels of communication with the people of this town. So I started us a Instagram account. It's called Southborough Mass. And Kat, I posted on there, like one of the bullets that I posted was about trails and connecting them to downtown and to, abutting towns and all of these things. And people were really excited. They were very excited. I mean, into the tune of like 5 people liked it, but that's a solid 40% of the people who actually follow this account right now. So I'm going to call that high engagement. And
Yeah.
also, I left your email because I know I read in one of the meeting minutes, I think it was with Board of Selectmen maybe, that cleaning up the trails post-storm is a volunteer effort. So if you get anybody in your email saying, I want to help you, that's
Awesome. Thank you.
I love this. What's the name of the Instagram account again?
It's just Southborough Mass.
It's
Okay.
45 followers now.
Yeah, I know. I was so excited. I was like, wow, look at us doing
46.
big things.
I might join Instagram just to be
You
46.
don't have Instagram?
There's too many apps, people. Too many apps.
I get that. I totally get that.
Now you have 46.
Yay. Thanks, Tom.
Gina, put in there, bring your own chainsaw.
I know, right? No tools will
After you
be.
sign the liability waiver, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety first and liability first.
Liability first, safety second.
Okay. And I think that was it on pedestrian cycling. And then on individual accessibility. So if you remember when we met last time, we had there was a very short reference to ADA compliance, and I put it under the historical section, and I think it had just been on the wrong line in the original source document, so that was my bad not to spot that. And we already had some recommendations around individual accessibility, but I've taken another look at those with Bill signs, and this is what he is kind of comfortable with having. So basically kind of consolidating the two original recommendations, which were, you can see them there on 4.1 and 4.2, really put those into the goal. So that becomes a very kind of strong goal. And then just having 3 recommendations. That's a typo, tippy typo there.
Got 3 typo, yeah, okay, good.
So you only found 3. I'm sure there's loads of
4.3.
spell checking was not a priority. So really around the fact that they're expanding the charter of the ADA. I think that this was done last year, I think, Sam, last October, so that the ADA committee can identify and receive complaints regarding compatibility issues. The big focus that he wants to make sure that everyone's aware of is that we're about to start an ADA self-evaluation study, which I think the sense is that that's going to kind of highlight a number of issues that then become specific topics for more detailed implementation. So I think this looks like a kind of a good section now.
Judith, which one are we going with? The one in the larger document or the individual document that you had posted?
So I sent you and Bill the original one because those were from the original. That was what was originally created last May, but Bill's comment was we've already got the ADA committee. So a lot of that is really redundant. And this is what I put together based on his feedback in the last kind of day or so. So this is the one we're going to go with. Unless you feel there's anything else that needs to be added into it.
So just to be clear, I should disregard the shared document that is just the section 4 or number 4 recommendations.
It should be the same.
Okay.
Wait a minute,
okay.
Let me double check. Hang on a sec. It is now the same. It's the same. I just put it back into the.
Okay.
Why have I got an anonymous goose and kangaroo? What is that? That is really weird.
Is that a Google thing?
I have no idea what that is.
Is it dinner?
Is it North Korea?
I'm telling you, Kim Jong-un. It's easy.
What does he have against kangaroos? They're very nice to watch.
Oh, it's really
What does he
weird.
have against us? Why is he doing this? I think it's avatars for other people who are.
Oh, maybe in the document, because I'm in the document. Oh,
Yeah, you're accessing the document. That's I think what it is.
Am I
you
the
are?
kangaroo or am I the swan? Whatever that other thing.
That's a goose. Do you want to be a goose or a kangaroo, Cat?
Kangaroo.
Look at the girl who's not good at technology telling you guys what those things are.
Oh. Are you in this as well, Gina?
I am. Yes, on my phone. I've been following along on my phone.
This
Sorry.
must be K for kangaroo, and this
Oh,
is
and she-
Gina. You must be the goose then.
Ah.
G for
Oh, no,
Gina.
Smart.
Anonymous, eh?
Say,
Sorry, Bill. Will.
Yes.
cover has been blown.
Does this make sense?
Number 4.
Yes.
Yes, it makes sense.
Okay. Good. Okay, great. So that's accessibility. What do we want to do now? We're zipping through this. Commercial diversity. Where's my Zoom? Am I still sharing?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, hang on a sec. I don't know. I wish I could get my head around how this sharing thing works, but there we go. Okay. Commercial diversity. Okay, so commercial diversity, we kind of this originally had Route 9 and separate sections for each of the villages and the downtown. And if you remember, we've taken the downtown initiative out and put that under sense of community. So what we've got left now is we just had a goal originally. And what I'm suggesting is, because it makes it easier to link the recommendations, is having 2 goals under commercial diversity, one around Route 9 and one around the Southwest villages, because then these recommendations, I think, kind of fit more neatly under it. So no, we didn't really, I didn't really change any of the recommendations here. Other than to add this one in, which came from expanded funding. And then, so we've got, so we'll end up with a Route 9 business corridor goal, and then Southwest, this was quite hard to show, but Southwest villages. So there was some duplication between the different, between the Fayetteville and the Corderville Southville recommendations. So I've tried to kind of rationalize those a little bit.
Judith, I think this makes a lot of sense in terms of this structure, because at least the way I think of it, there is a different set of objectives for Route 9 versus all the villages as a group, where I see the villages as a strong push for sense of community. I don't think it's likely that we're going to generate a lot of business activity that's going to have a huge impact on the town's tax base out of the villages, although they are important in terms, again, of the sense of community and for example, Southville, Corderville connection to the T station, et cetera. I think Route 9 has the opportunity to be more of an economic engine for generating tax revenue. And I think we look at that in a different way in terms of things like zoning and infrastructure. So having those in 2 separate groups seems to me, at least, to make a lot of sense. I don't know whether people look at it that way or not, but at least that's sort of where some of this is coming from.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I have one more thing to add. And I'm sorry it's so late in the game, but from your email to me the other day, Judith, I was thinking about some of this and speaking to John Wood, who's the chair of the EDC, and we were talking about, some of these issues. And one thing that's come up with our committee a little bit more recently is we've started to kind of educate ourselves on TIFs and how those work. And I know it's something that the Board of Selectmen is starting to look at as well, and we've had a few people come speak on it. But it's a way to sort of entice businesses. And I know, you talk about vacancy rates, and that's a sort of a prominent issue right now as we look at some of the office space on Route 9 that is, we're across the real estate world, everyone's wondering if and when office space is coming back, and if it's coming back at the same capacity. So in looking at ways to potentially entice different businesses and control vacancy rates and stabilize the tax base, we're trying to educate ourselves around TIFs, and we think that might be one mechanism that would be helpful. So I don't know if that's something that we'd want to put under the recommendations to continue to explore. We're that's sort of up next on our agenda. We've been talking about it for a little while, but we're starting to really dive into it. I don't know if people had thoughts on that.
Sorry to ask, but what does TIPS stand for?
TIF, TIF. It's and I'm sorry, my 9 o'clock at night brain is on. It's
Incentive.
tax incentive. What is it?
Tax increment financing.
Increment financing. That's right.
I think I used to think it was incentive, which it sort of is. It basically allows people to get a tax break for investing in a particular project, and essentially it defers the tax revenue. They get a break on the front end, but in theory, by investing in the property, you get more taxes later on. So in theory, you wind up ahead in the long run, and you get a building or a business entity investing in town where you otherwise might not have. Marlborough has a big deal with TIFs. They've attracted some business from us actually through it. And a lot of people look at it as a tax giveaway. So it's a bit of an emotional issue sometimes, but really, again, if you look at it more comprehensively, it typically turns out to be a net plus for the town, even though there are circumstances under which the town can come out behind on it, but that's not the way I understand it usually works. So it's one tool in the toolkit that we have not used historically that I think we ought to seriously consider.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, that's right. And I think there were some misconceptions about it, and we've had some people come and talk to us about it. And it's shown that typically there is a good return on investment by giving a business or entity a break up front, and taking a parcel of land or a building that is not high revenue generating from a tax perspective, and making it into something that is something that is more highly taxable, that's paid down the line. And it kind of is sort of a win-win for the town and for business development.
How are these investments funded?
I don't think they're funded. I think my understanding is, somebody comes in with a proposal for a project. And again, I don't want to speak too much because I don't know that much. I'm just learning about it. But my understanding is somebody comes in with a proposal for a project, the town offers a TIF as an incentive, and there's no funding involved. It's just that they get a break on taxes up front that's paid back later over time, is my understanding. So there's nothing out of pocket for the town to do, if that's what you're asking.
The company that you're giving it to actually provides the funding. So
right.
they locate in town, they make an investment in the property, and so that's presumably where it comes from. So somebody comes in, for example, and puts in a warehousing operation. They build out a space or modify a space or whatever, and they pay for that. And they get a short-term and near-term tax break as a result. But then if they fill the warehouse up with taxable goods, we get more money in the long run from the higher value later on.
What about auxiliary services that need to be funded? It sounds like the town would be on the hook for those, expand the fire station or whatever.
Yeah, and again, like anybody else, I mean, if we've got properties, for example, we had some buildings that are vacant that we lost tenants for. So somebody comes in and fills that building. We're already obligated basically to protect that from a public safety standpoint. So there may be small incremental additional costs there, hard to tell, but there is that factor certainly.
Yeah, in my understanding, it's very, discretionary. I believe it's the Board of Selectmen that would have approval over granting on a case-by-case basis. And it's not something that's just, oh, we do TIFs now and everybody comes and shows up and gets handed a TIF. It's something that's sort of a tool that's used on rare occasions to incentivize something that we're looking for. So that fills a need for the town from some perspective.
And if we were considering it, I guarantee you there will be a very high turnout in any meeting that is considering it.
Okay.
Well scrutinized, I'm sure.
Is that something that can just be added to the recommendation that we already have, that continue to look for ways to leverage Route 9 corridor for increased CIP?
So you could add that as a for example, TIFs.
Well, it has changing zoning, or other expansion of tax producing growth, or so maybe explore TIF could be added to that.
Yeah, could do that, yeah.
Okay.
But Route 9 wouldn't be the only place you might use TIFs, right?
Wouldn't have to be, but again, it seems to me that that's the prime location for motivating commercial development, given traffic and other issues in town. I think we'd be hard pressed, for example, to put up a major commercial activity on Route 30 someplace, even if we could find a place to zone for it. So that, at least to me, that's the path of least resistance to generating additional commercial activities along Route 9.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, I don't think by putting it there, it would limit it exclusively to Route 9, but I think that's what we had in mind too, is, especially as we're looking at some vacant properties on Route 9 and things like that. And I agree that makes the most sense and is most likely where it would be used.
Okay, so commercial diversity, that's good. I mean, if we're talking about money and taxes, this is probably a good one to go to next. Is where's it gone? Public services. Okay, can everyone see this one?
Not yet. There it is.
Here it is. And that is the wrong version, so that's not good, is it? Let's try again. Oh, version control. What was my favorite? Let's take that. Sorry, guys. You can tell I was doing this early in the morning. Okay, just a sec. That's not it either.
Sometimes, Judith, you have to stop sharing your screen and restart it with the document up.
Yeah, let me just try that.
Frozen that way.
So I'm sorry, Kim, I just ask a quick question about TIFs. I don't mean to go backwards. And I figured, well, we have a second. I'm sorry if I missed this, but so TIFs I think usually are used for areas of like low economic output. Are we limiting these things to Route 9? Are we allowing?
No, don't have to. I mean, we can certainly say we will consider TIFs as a tool to support development.
Yeah.
And then that can happen in a variety of different ways. I guess my point, Gina, was simply that I think Route 9 is the most likely area for that, not that other areas couldn't develop, maybe around the T station, for example.
Right.
Potentially. And so if we have the tool, we're not limited as to where we can use it.
Gotcha. Okay. I just didn't know if there was, some geographic constraints on where we would allow these things to, or we would be giving these things out.
That's more limited by zoning, actually. So, I mean,
Oh, okay. It is,
you can't build a factory on Southville Road, probably.
right.
But in
And
Marlboro,
And
but in
I
Marlboro,
and
Sam said, they did attract a lot of companies, biotech companies, especially in the old digital lands over there off of Forest Street. So
Yeah.
it's not a suppressed or depressed area. It's just to bring in big corporate names, and they're there for 10, 20, 30, whatever, 40 years.
Yeah.
And let me suggest a great opportunity, the EMC Dell property.
Oh, it's a beautiful piece of property.
could be an interesting thing. And who knows what they're going to do, but that's...
yeah, we've been trying to get information from them for so long, and they are pretty tight-lipped. So
Put it this way, Dell, I work for Dell, and so
do you?
a lot of the offices, the smaller offices, are closed. So
Oh.
my office closed. It was in Needham. There's several in New England. I only got the New England announcement, but there's probably like 5 or 6 offices that are now closed, home office.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
they're going the other way.
Yeah.
That maybe means that it's potentially on the market at some point, because I can't believe they're eager to carry real estate.
Oh, I know. But that was an EMC purchase.
Right. Yes.
Prior to Dell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a little while. I don't think we've reached out since pandemic times, but maybe it's a good time for us to reach out again in light of that, because I know, there's been interest in it, and even people who've come forward with offers or inquiries that are serious have not gotten much feedback. So.
And Tom, if they do decide to sell it, maybe that's a place we could put our community swimming pool.
Oh, beautiful.
Don't
I don't know
know.
if anybody ever walked. There's a road that goes from Crystal Pond, the backside,
Yeah,
all the way to, I think that's Flanders.
yeah, yeah,
It's a road that's paved, sidewalks, everything, and no cars.
yeah.
It's very peaceful back there. You can see
Put
the
a drag strip. Fantastic.
What about our polo grounds? Where are we going to build those?
There's room here too, actually. Perfect.
But it'll be a great swimming pool right on the top of the hill there. You can swim and outlook the hills and the mountains. Oh, gorgeous.
Perfect.
Tom's already there.
I'm there.
Okay, I can't find this document. The one that's in there is it's not, it's, damn it. There's a second version that I did this morning that seems to have disappeared.
It's good security, Judith. You managed to protect it even for yourself.
I just don't know what I did with it. It's just so annoying. Because it's the one that I had a conversation with Sam last night over some of these things, and then I updated the document, and now I can't find it.
I know you're probably ignoring my
it.
comments. That's
You
okay.
deleted it.
Don't hurt my feelings.
Probably.
Blame it on North Korea.
Yeah. It's so annoying. It was so lovely as well. Sam, what do you want to do? Can I'm going to suggest I'll update this again, and we'll.
You do it next meeting. It's not that long, so
Yeah, let's do it at the next meeting, because
and not a lot of change.
there's not a lot of change, and it'll just take me a bit to get my head around where it is. Okay, sorry about that. What should we do now? What else is there?
Judith, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I saw Katura Martin in the school committee meeting earlier. Do we have anything new from her in terms of the school piece?
No. This is the first meeting. This is the first, she did send me an email tonight. This is the first meeting they've had since we met in December.
Okay.
So she'll have an update for us in February.
Okay.
I think, diversity of housing. Tom, there were a couple of changes to this one. Do you want to?
Yep. So just to let you know, Shopsy has not had a meeting. So we had two master plan meetings in a row before the next Shopsy meeting. So we have a Shopsy meeting scheduled for the 25th, I think it is, right, Sarah?
It's the 28th.
28th, thank you.
Close enough.
So I don't know if people actually took a look at this or read it, the previous version. So what the major changes that Sarah and I and Judith discussed around this was in the executive summary of the HPP, which is those bulleted items, we want it to be part of the master plan as the narrative. Because those are really, a narrative points. Like, the master plan should provide housing options that attract families, reinforce Southborough's economic growth, minimize impact on new developments on property areas for open space conservation. So those are like the narrative part of the master plan. Now, if we go to the second page, which she is doing, is then from here, we took a lot of the stuff that was more in the strategies around that and some proposed recommendations and then potential actions. So this is all, again, all this is derived from the housing production plan itself. So there's nothing really new created out of it. We just organize it so we have concrete goals, some recommendations, and some, I consider the potential actions, not just for Shopsy, but for, Shopsy is a part of that, is that the measurables things. For example, goal number one, enhance local capacity. One of the things we want to do is secure and coordinate the use of the CPA funds as an ongoing method. And so one of the actionable things is develop a 5-year strategic plan so that we can move, town meeting article can move CPA funds into the housing grant, more of a housekeeping versus if something comes in on the market that we want to do, we have to wait for town meeting, and it's a lot of delay. So it's not moving money into SHOP-C, it's actually moving money that's already there into the housing trust. So those are very measurable things. And those are some of the things we're actually are doing right now to put in an article every year, just to transfer funds that are already allocated just into the housing trust. And that we're a little bit more nimble if something comes up. So that's just an example of taking it through from a proposal all the way to a measurable action item. And I won't read this thing here if people want to glance or have any questions.
So Tom, just to clarify, basically what you're proposing is that money that is already allocated to purchase property for town use is just moved into a more, I guess, liquid place where you can access it. Is that correct? So if you want to buy something, you can actually buy it.
Yes. So it's actually money that's already collected through the CPA. And remember, as part of the CPA is for affordable housing.
Yep.
And then to actually buy anything, it has to be, SHOP-C doesn't buy anything. SHOP-C then proposes it to the Southborough Housing Trust.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones that actually have the funds. So they're the gatekeepers of the funds, but they don't have any funds because it's all stuck into the CPA. So
Gotcha.
it's a snowball effect. And it's, when you peel back this onion, it was kind of frustrating. It's like, oh, if something great happened, but we can't do anything for you, like 12 months because we're not in the cycle of the town meeting. So,
the bureaucracy.
Yes.
I'll say it, it's fine.
So, like another one, there's a typo on 3A to establish mixed-use buildings in Southborough. So some of that goes with the, we'll just say downtown area for a mixed-use business, residential. So it's not that we're pushing these things, but these things help, have a variable inventory of housing.
Gotcha. So, but no tiny houses. Tiny houses.
We're not zoning. We're not gonna, no. So when you say tiny houses, I think of those little trailer things. I think it's good to have there are going to be needs for people that want a 2-bedroom house. And if people consider that tiny, we can debate that.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, I don't think it would work in a place like Southborough anyway. I think if we were like Cambridge or Wellesley, even like someone, probably not Wellesley, but like Cambridge or Somerville or something like that, something with, I guess, somewhere with a different demographic of people, it could be interesting. But I get it. We're trying to attract some young professionals that don't necessarily want to live in a 4,000 square foot, $800,000 house. And that's kind of, the bulk of the inventory here, at least, around where I am and from what I've seen. And, I think that their diversity of housing is for sure. And also for seniors, like they don't want to live there either. Like, let's be real.
And we want seniors
to sell that house.
We want the seniors to sell their, their house that they raised their 2, 3, 4, 6 children or whatever. We want them to stay in town, to downsize their house, to make it easier for them to enjoy, the next 20, 30, 40 years
absolutely.
of life, without moving so far away from their family if they decide to stay in the metro, west area. So there's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of things in the play there, but that's, those are the type of things that for a variety of housing needs, not just all affordable, but it's a variety of housing needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, changing or, kind of increasing capacity in terms of the housing stock, the type of housing is going to be really important moving forward. Affordability is definitely a key component, but just in general, getting different types and styles of homes, I think will really make a big difference.
I'll let you guys to read through this. I'm going to be presenting it. Sarah and I will be presenting this at the SHOP-C on the 28th, and we'll come back with any feedback.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
I don't remember, maybe it's already in here, but one of the interesting pieces of news is this economic development bill that our friendly governor just signed around Christmas time, like $625 million worth of economic development stimulus, which includes the governor's housing choice legislation, which in fact lowers the zoning board vote required to change zoning to support affordable housing from 2/3 vote to, town meeting vote, rather, change zoning bylaws from 2/3 to simple majority. And so I think that opens up interesting possibility for zoning change that would have been more difficult under the old laws here. And there are some limitations around that, but I think that creates, again, opportunity. It might be worth mentioning in here someplace to take advantage of the new housing choice legislation where appropriate to modify zoning bylaws, to recognize that now exists there.
Yeah, I think that came out after, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that came out, that was signed after the HPP.
Yes, it was. It
And I
was.
thought it was before December. I thought it was more in November, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and again, this is something that had been on the governor's agenda for several years. And the fascinating thing there is he hadn't made any progress with it. So what they did is they sort of like getting your dog to take a pill, you wrap it in a hot dog kind of thing, and the dog eats it up. But they had like $400 million worth of local incentive money for various things. And so the local legislators finally got behind the thing, given that there was money involved. And frankly, we're just as guilty because that bill includes $250,000 for Southborough.
So yes, we do have a little pork ourselves.
We have our piece of pork.
I always just say a small piece of bacon.
Sam, is that just for zoning for affordable housing, or is that all housing?
I don't remember, Mimi. It's certainly affordable. And
Yes.
again, there's a list of restrictions around that. Certain kinds of things require the majority vote, but not everything. I don't remember all those details,
But I thought if we actually have our 10%, we're still
that I don't think that has anything to do with the 10%.
Oh, I thought it did. If you still had over the 10%, then they, then.
Yeah. I don't remember at this point.
That's a whole nother gate to go through.
It does open the door for a variety of housing. And so I think for me at least, the master plan piece says, let's understand and take advantage of how that might help us improve housing diversity.
Yes. Yeah, we did discuss it as a committee and stuff like that. And there's a lot of good things in it for affordable housing. There's some things that probably different towns and cities and communities probably don't like about it. But again, I guess the essence of the bill was to make it easier for affordable housing around the Commonwealth.
Right.
I just want to point this out in case anybody has any heartaches about this. Not that anybody would, but 3B, multifamily housing is not just duplexes. Multifamily could have multiple generations living in the same type of household. So don't think that as, we're promoting duplex city here. So that way there, it's not, cookie cutter duplexes to reach our affordable housing and stuff. It's more for, one of the ones that we were discussing around the multifamily is multi-generationals. Maybe, mom and dad wants to live in the same physical building on the same plot of land with their child and their growing family and have separate kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, etc.
I worked hard to get my children out of my house. Hold on now.
Yeah,
How
I think
did you do that?
I have one left. And he's working in the basement.
My oldest turns 3 tomorrow. This is crazy to me. The thought of them leaving the house, like, that's insane.
Hey, don't blink, because
all depends on your perspective.
22.
It's coming.
My 6-year-old was flabbergasted when we had a conversation the other day that someday he would leave the house and not live with us. And he told me, no, he's going to live with me forever.
It's like, yes, that's right. You can live with me forever.
That may be true, actually. Careful.
Careful what you wish for.
There's at some point when they're growing up, you're like, oh, I can't wait until they leave.
I'm sure. I have 2 girls, so I'm sure that day will come.
I understand Apple's got a lot of positions for younger workers.
Right.
Remote work.
Another component around the multifamily discussion was adaptive reuse of some of the larger kind of historic homes, you know, and kind of re-envisioning those, you know, as, you know, smaller units. So, you know, on the landscape, it would still look like, you know, one home, but, you know, maybe inside there would be, you know, 2 or 3 units versus just a large single family home.
Yeah, very similar to if you're right next to St. Anne's, if you're heading, we'll call it east, that White House that was there, probably people went by it so many times. If you notice lately, they're renovating it and it's gonna be a 2-family. So the footprint stays the same. The building probably gonna look very similar, but it will actually be a 2-condo, like Sarah said.
Yeah. I think we have little danger of overshooting the mark on this one. I mean, it's, if we relax the constraints some, it's not going to wind up with 1,000 new units built in the next 2 years kind of deal. So
Agreed. I just want to make sure anybody, you know, doesn't have that thought when they read that.
I'm sure some will, but I think there's a good response.
Okay, that was see me, I can't find my document. That was it in terms of the updates. Let me just, sorry. Let me go back to here. I can find the, oh, here we go. Here's the agenda. We've covered, yeah, apart from the last one, we've done everything on that. You can see.
Judith,
Yes.
I can give you a quick update from the Historical Commission like we talked about.
Oh, yes.
We had a Historical Commission meeting last night. I had shared the document that you sent to me, and we do want to do some tweaking to it. We discussed it a little bit, and I have 2 commission members that have committed to working on it, and hopefully so that we may not have a meeting before the February master plan meeting. Hopefully we will. But if not, I should at least have a draft for you ahead of that February meeting. And then hopefully soon thereafter, we will vote on it.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you.
Sure.
And then the only other one is recreation, and I don't think Kristen's on tonight. So I will follow up with her and Katura as well. But I think, you know, I think we've broken the back of these things now. So what I'm going to do, I think probably for the next, because a lot of this, these documents kind of show the audit trail. I'm going to update them all so we have a clean document, and I'm probably going to put it into one document so that we can kind of follow it all through. The Excel document that like is so long that no one can read, I'm updating that as I go along, but I just haven't put it out on the shared folder yet because it's still a work in progress, but that's being updated in parallel. Okay, that was my bit.
Judith,
Yes.
can I ask a question, and Mimi as well? I like to sort of step back every once in a while and say, where is this going and how do we get to the finish line? And sort of my high level view that I would be interested in feedback on, and I could be wrong, is that I think we got a lot of really good content that we've substantially broadened from the last time around 10 years ago with this thing. I think it's a much more robust structure now. And I think we've got the sort of the skeleton here at this point. and that a next step includes things like adding flesh around these things. And I think we've got a lot of good sources of that flesh from the various plans that have been developed, like the open space and recreation plan, the housing production plan, the recreation plan, whatever, that has a lot of background data and good context for these things that the prior master plan had. And there's good stuff in there that we need to update and so forth. But to me, it's a parallel effort now to start thinking about how you add some flesh around this. And I think that we've got some pieces that are not in the quotes state template structure here for the plan, which I don't see as a problem at all. In that as long as we cover what's required, then we can add whatever else we want. There's no restriction in terms of our ability to add other things that we think are important, as long as you hit the check off the box for the things that the state is looking for with the plan. And so it seems to me that's sort of the next process down the line here, to continue to refine, update, and fill in a few missing pieces here that are not very substantial at this point in terms of the overall structure. And then start thinking about a draft that begins to put the whole thing together. And I also, I guess my own personal bias is that I'm not so consumed with the need to produce a wonderful glossy 300-page report that has fully artistic graphics and whatever in it, as much as the content to me is the important thing. So if I have X dollars to spend or X hours to spend on it, I'd rather spend 90% of those hours getting good content and 10% getting the graphics and sort of glossy product kind of thing, versus the other way around. And maybe that's the wrong bias or the wrong mix, but it seems to me again that having the content in the plan is the critical thing versus the window dressing parts of it. And again, that's maybe overgeneralizing some, but I think that the value of this is going to be having the content that people can refer to and reinforce as the various committees and boards and commissions work over the next several years to try to make some of these things happen. And it's not going to make any faster progress if it looks slick versus not looking so slick, I think. So that may be an overstatement again, but that's sort of my high level view of how we're proceeding here, what some of the next steps might be. And I'd be interested in any feedback on that one. If I'm missing the point somehow, let me know.
So I think that leads perfectly into our next agenda item. So by adding flesh, do you mean begin outline of chapters?
Well, even more, I think we got sort of outline in some ways. Yeah, I think we've got a lot of the content out of the grids that we've been working on here. So there will be certainly more work on the outline, which will include, exhibits that we need and so on and so forth. But I think that's exactly the direction that seems to me to make sense.
So that was this discussion item of how to move forward, how to begin to outlining the chapters and whether to assign people a chapter or how to best move forward and accomplish this.
I think Judith has done so well so far that we should appoint her.
Well, she can't do it all.
Wait a minute, hold on. If we have different people do different things, then we lose some consistency. I don't know, maybe there's a template or something that we need to do centrally to say the chapters ought to sort of look like this, and then integrate what we have in terms of content to date with that template would be something that an individual could do for each one of these things or something. I don't know.
Oh.
The most efficient way is. I think there's some value for having a structure that says it ought to look like, I'm just making it up, demographic data or context and the content, and then what do the implementation activities look like or something, I don't know, timeline for implementation.
So could the previous master plan be used for structure?
Sure, and other town master plans, it's worth looking around to sort of see if other people are doing interesting things with some of the plans that have been, developed in the last several years, for example, for people. I think that I have no qualms about plagiarizing. If somebody has a good idea out there, let's look at it. I don't know, Sarah, do you have access to other towns' master plans easily? Does the planning department collect those, or?
We don't collect them, I mean, it would be easy enough to research to find some samples though, if we're looking for, possibly a new format. I also think that obviously going with the format that we have from the previous master plan is easy because we already have it, but I'm open to looking into, something new if that's what the board.
There are, on our shared drive, there are some samples of other towns' master.
Yeah.
Foxborough and Concord are on there.
Yep.
They put a few of them on there.
And I remember looking at some of those and others early on in this project, and I was actually interested that there was a pretty good variety of how people did this. So the way we did it wasn't necessarily, the only way from last time, certainly. And also, Sarah, maybe you know this, at one point we were looking for the actual original document in terms of, Word or whatever the software was that they created the original one from, and we had a hard time finding it at one point. Is that available out there if we actually want to just use cut and paste on some of the original one?
Yes, we do have the Word version of the previous master plan.
That's on our shared drive too.
Okay, I didn't see that.
Each chapter, I think, is in.
With the graphics and everything in there?
Yep.
For the whole original, okay, good. I missed that.
So yeah, and I mean, in terms of format, do we want to kind of take a look and decide at the next meeting what makes sense, or do we want to just decide to go with the old format so that we can kind of start to divvy up chapter assignments now?
I hate to waste a month. On the other hand, I don't know what format I would be inclined to follow. I mean, a good sort of fail-safe is to use the old one. Start thinking about that and see. I don't remember, Amy, Sarah, anybody else, was it exactly the same format for each chapter in that one?
It was.
Yeah.
It
So
was.
maybe we start with that as the format. Say, how would we take that and develop each one of these areas given what we've developed in terms of new content?
It seems like the easiest way to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And again, I don't care so much about the format as I do the content.
Right.
Right. So we've developed good content over the past however million months it's been. So, I think we're in great shape there.
Yep.
And we could, start to, outline and draft these chapters in the, previous format. And if someone, along the way, finds, a sample that they feel is really compelling, and again, I can do a little bit of research, then maybe we can kind of just, copy and paste, what we have in terms of drafts at that point into the newer format that we decide.
I was going to say, I think as long as we have, the content organized the way that we want, we can probably fit it into any format that
right
feels appropriate.
Agreed.
And maybe what we do then is we got how many here? 10 or so, I don't know, 10 or 12 chapters. Have somebody who was involved with that particular area be the point person. Per our discussion of open meeting law last time, there would be a person who is responsible for pushing forward on coming up with a first pass at that, at least in outline form, if not more, next time. And that person can reach out to others as they choose to get support, however they can arrange for that. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yes. So what's your chapter, Sam?
I didn't do any of them, did I? I'm happy to take on, I was involved in a couple of these, I guess, but I'm happy to take on, whatever makes sense. I mean, there's some obvious ones here, I think, but I was involved with the schools, but that's Katura now, and had some of the economic development stuff. Services and facilities I was involved in as well, so I mean, I could do any of those. Tom is the housing guy. That's easy.
And I think
Tom and Sarah.
Tom has it easy because I
Leave
think
Sarah
Sarah
out.
did a draft of the housing chapter already.
Wait a
You're a
minute.
step ahead.
Crib notes.
Actually, I don't want to volunteer, Sarah, if you don't have the time, but do you want to do that and maybe share what we came up with? Maybe we can look around at different master plan reports and then go with ours, the same format, or try a different one and see how it fits.
Sure.
I mean, because I
Yeah.
think ours is, like I said, we're going to plagiarize a lot from the MPP.
Yeah.
And I think it would be kind of easy to see how it would do the different formats.
Sure.
I mean, I don't want to volunteer you, but I think I did.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because, like you said, the content is largely written already. So I could draft it up in a couple of different formats just to have some visual representation for the next meeting.
And since Katura is not here, we can volunteer her for the schools.
That's right.
Make her chair. So resiliency, logical candidate for that one.
For who?
I say, is there a logical candidate for resiliency? It sounds like Karen is open space, maybe, I don't know. Recreation, maybe we could get Kristen to do that. I know the two candidates there.
I'll take whatever anybody doesn't want to do. So let me know.
Here's your opportunity to
Sure, if that's what you'd prefer, I can absolutely take on that chapter for sure. Let me just write down.
Julie.
Resiliency?
Yeah, I'll do resiliency.
Okay. Julie was a logical candidate for economic development, right?
Right, to me.
And frankly, if we don't have all of them assigned tonight, that's not the end of the world. So we'll get most of them probably. Circulation and transportation.
Why don't you let me take a go at that one? Because I worked with like Bonnie and Kathy and
Okay.
Kat, others on it.
Okay. Natural and cultural resources.
That's what we've actually ended up calling sense of community. And I did a lot. I did a lot of stuff on that. Is Joyce not with us anymore, Mimi?
She was here tonight.
Yeah, I saw her logged in when I logged in.
Oh.
Oh. I just haven't seen her on. Okay. Well, why don't I have a go at that one as well? So I'll do circulation, transportation, which is accessibility, connectivity, and I'll do natural and cultural resources, which is sense of community.
Okay. What was services and facilities? I could do that one maybe. I can't remember. Was that something I did before?
Yeah, that's the one that I lost the document I worked on.
Okay, good.
I'll update that.
I can do services and facilities then.
Yeah.
And we have land use.
I'll do land use.
Okay. And what did we do with open space and recreation?
We gave that to Karen, didn't we?
Yeah, so the part of it that I would be less able to do is the recreation part. So, I
Well,
just need to,
But you as point person could reach out
Yeah,
for
you
help.
can reach out to
yeah,
me.
Kristen.
yeah.
Is that everything except for vision and goal statement?
Yeah, I'd leave the vision and goal statement for now.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But like writing the executive summary, it's better to write it at the end than the beginning.
Is accessibility covered?
I don't think it was.
That's that.
That's circulation and
We
transport.
put that under circulation transportation. So maybe
Okay.
Will, I can just work. I can reach out to you and Bill, and maybe I'll just do a first draft, and you guys can have that section. You guys can help me with that.
Okay.
Good.
Wow, good job.
About that. So that means that we will be done with the plan by February 14th or whatever.
Go team.
Well, wasn't our goal to present it at a draft at town meeting,
That was.
which is what, March 20th, maybe? Or probably not.
I will say that I do recall I had just graduated from high school when we started this project. So
I had brown hair.
Sam, if that was the case, I was in high school.
I had hair, actually, brown or otherwise. I do have a picture of me with hair from many, many years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Frightening.
Oh, you'll have to share it next meeting.
I can't.
And we all could share younger pictures of ourselves. That would be fun.
Oh boy.
And we'll call it Pictures of Ourselves When This Started.
Yeah.
When exactly did this start?
And then we can post it on Southborough's Instagram.
There we go.
We ought to have that with everybody picture, high school picture there. Here's when we started the project.
All right. So now on to approval of minutes. In the November 18th minutes that we approved last meeting, we need to revote to approve. Kristen, who's an ex officio, seconded it, and she can't. So if we could have a motion to approve the November 18 minutes.
So move.
And
Second.
Who seconded?
Judith,
Sorry, thank you.
all in favor? Latrell, yes. Kuzmiski,
Yes.
Stivers,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Savidovich,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Markelier,
Yes.
and Connolly.
Yes.
Is that everybody? So,
That's enough.
all right. And then on to the December 16 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those?
So move.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Latrell, yes. Stivers,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Markelier,
Yes.
Connolly.
Yes.
Connolly, yes. Glesnitsky,
Yes.
Davidovich,
Yes.
and Watson.
Yes.
Good job on the minutes, Kate.
Oh, thank you.
Great
He
work.
does the greatest minutes, doesn't
Oh,
he?
he does. You
Oh my
do.
God, thank you guys.
They're actually interesting to read.
Wow.
Wait a minute now, hold on.
It's where I get all of my Instagram information from.
That's great.
Thank you.
I'm gonna start sneaking some really juicy stuff in.
I was having a hard time getting to sleep the other night, and they were actually very effective.
Yeah, I bet.
No.
Yeah, I make my kids listen here and there. I read some of my sentences out loud here and there.
So the next meeting is scheduled or on our list for February 10th. Is that still agreeable to everybody?
What day of the week is that? Still a Wednesday, right?
Wednesday, yeah.
With chapters complete.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah.
I move, so move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Roll call, Latrell, yes. Stivers,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Warren. Mark Hillier.
Yes.
Warren says yes.
Okay. Connolly,
Yes.
Glazmitsky,
Yes.
Savidovich,
Yes.
and Warren.
And Watson.
Watson.
Yes.
Sorry.
Warren gets 2 votes tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Judith. Awesome job.
Thank you. Great
Yeah,
work.
thank you so much, Judith, for all that work.
Thank you.
Huge progress. And remember, dig out those high school pictures for the.
Hmm.
No.
That's right.